I am muted. Hey, everybody. I'm here with Jared Tendler. We're excited to have him. You might know him from being the author of The Mental Game. He is a coach as well for poker players, traders, esports, golf. Am I missing anything there?
Other random degenerates like sports bettors and horse punters. So yeah, basically anybody who's looking to perform at a high level, I will happily take you on and see what we can do.
Nice. Okay, so Jared's got a survey he'd like you to fill out. It should only take a minute to fill out. So check out the chat. There's a link right in there on SurveyMonkey. Go ahead and fill that out, and we'll review it later. Yeah. So Jared, for the people that don't know who you are, I kind of just gave you a summary, but maybe you can tell us what you've been working on and what you do day to day.
Yeah, thanks, Josh. Appreciate the opportunity, and certainly welcome everybody here. My primary job is to try to help you from a mental and emotional standpoint solve some of the bigger issues that are affecting your trading. Now, I do that with golfers and poker players and sports bettors, and I've even worked with a radiologist. Basically, anybody who is looking to improve and willing to put a little bit of time and effort. I think a lot of times with psychology, it can kind of either go in two directions. One, we sort of overplay its importance and say it's all trading, or for golf is 90% mental. It's like, but golf is a physical sport first and foremost. You don't hit the ball with your mind. You don't make trades solely based on your mental functioning. If you don't have a proven system, or at least a system that is close to being proved out, or having any kind of technical expertise, you're basically just throwing darts at a dartboard, and it's just kind of purely random at that point, right? So you're building an edge like a casino builds in edge in their operations, right? Like slot machine has a 8, 9, 10, 12% edge based on where you are. Well, you're just kind of trying to create a human slot machine, but your ability to consistently exercise that edge, right, is where a lot of the mental and emotional components come in, but not all, right? Market changes. There's a lot of adaptations that need to occur over time, and your ability to kind of stay ahead of the curve is also a technical issue as well. How well you can align your personality to your trading strategy, because there are so many different ways in which you could be trading, is also kind of a psychological one. But again, I think that the key is that you're looking for kind of key opportunities to improve. And in my experience, the easiest way and the most clear way that you can improve mentally and emotionally is in correcting your repetitive mistakes. So the things that you already know are wrong, but for some reason you kind of can't stop yourself from doing it. It's the FOMO, it's the revenge trading,
Sure.
it's the moving your stops, it's the not taking profit or moving profit targets, it's closing too soon. Like these are all things that you do not need more technical expertise in order to be able to correct, right? What you need is to have your emotional system in more stable, consistent place. Have your focus be better. There's a whole kind of host of things that ultimately are going to help to produce that. But the bottom line is, like, we're kind of de-risking the time and effort you're putting into improving mentally and emotionally by focusing on correcting the specific mistakes that you have.
So in the stages of sort of becoming a trader, you need a baseline edge, right? So the technical edge, understanding what you're doing, something that actually gives you an edge in the market. Those emotional difficulties that people have are basically inevitable if you don't address them. It's just the way of trading, putting money on the line, that emotional journey. So at what point do you think, obviously maybe it's too late to start addressing or thinking about or learning about your psychology? Maybe you don't want to hit those walls first. I don't think everyone needs to suffer as much as they're suffering in trading. So
Agreed.
where do you see along the line in someone's trading journey, if someone was just getting started from scratch, when they should start researching the emotional side and kind of getting ahead of the game on that?
I think if you want to, out of interest, to familiarize yourself with some of the key kind of psychological principles, the areas in which you might end up struggling with, especially if you've struggled in other performance environments, whether it be in school, in work, in other sports, you name it, where you know that you hate losing. you know that you have a tendency to get overconfident or to lose confidence or to, you know, become fearful or struggle with stress or become, you know, way too perfectionistic. If you know you have those patterns, the odds are pretty damn good that they're going to show up in trading. So you can kind of get ahead of a little bit, whether that they are kind of actively an issue elsewhere in your life today, or they just were historically. You can just kind of prepare yourself and kind of acclimate to the possibility and the likelihood that that's going to happen in the future, or at least familiarize yourself with the things that could eventually become an issue, so you can just sort of stay ahead of it. But besides that, until you have enough experience, until you have enough of a knowledge of the kind of nuts and bolts of your trading strategy or which one you're going to go with, you know, there's definitely not a need to be working on your psychology, right? It's to me, it's until you kind of start to run into those brick walls. Now, it can be tricky because sometimes you might find this particular trading strategy that you've been learning about, and it just it isn't working. It's not making you money fast enough, you know, and then you decide to kind of jump ship and go look elsewhere. Now, is that a result of you being impatient? Is it because you're lacking confidence? You know, or is it actually because the system is not really kind of well aligned with your personality and how you are ultimately going to become more profitable? Maybe it's not even a good one anyway, but you can't tell yet because you're still too new. That's hard to know, right? So it gets a little bit fuzzy. And so again, I think that's where you got to kind of look historically. Like historically, have you had a tendency to be impatient? Have you had a tendency to, you know, just like kind of bounce around from one thing to the next, not really being able to kind of settle on particular strategies? And if the answer is firmly no, well then, okay, it's probably, again, probabilistically more likely that you are, you know, just not really kind of jiving with this system, and yeah, go look elsewhere, see what you find. But if the probability is really high, well, now all of a sudden you got to examine for yourself and maybe talk with some other traders, get some advice on kind of where you are and express the limitations that you think the strategy has, and learn a bit more about why it is that you're trying to jump ship, whether it's an internal one or more of a strategy-based one.
So a lot of the traders I talk to, they struggle with the introspection or really acknowledging that they have a problem with some of those things. So they have that they sort of like they want to put it under the rug. They don't want to think that that's the problem. They might want to think, oh, it's emotional control, you know, growing up in the area I grew up in, it's definitely, you know, as a guy, you want to suppress the emotions. It's like, that's how you get through life. You push it down. In trading, when you do that, you're screwed. That's definitely a problem. And if you don't fix that, you have an issue. So what would you say to the traders that when they're right now, they're in a place in their life, even maybe where they think emotional control means eliminating the emotions? So how should the traders relate to the emotions instead?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing here is to like why you can't just like suppress emotions, and as you said, like you're screwed if you try to here, is because the stress and pressure that you're under in trading is, you know, orders of magnitude greater than what you experience in your day-to-day job, in your day-to-day life, right? It's your money on the line in I think the most competitive marketplace in the world, and so you're competing against massive institutions. You're competing against other retail traders who are incredibly seasoned. You've got algos, you've got AI. Like there's a lot of factors that make this a very hard and challenging endeavor. Not impossible, just hard. So the pressure that you're under here basically kind of magnifies any imperfection. And that includes emotion. So if you try to suppress your emotions here, you can do it for a period of time, but it becomes like a ticking time bomb. You know, you kind of keep shoving it away. The intensity of the environment is going to make it like a pressure cooker, and it's eventually going to explode. And that is a big reason why traders end up having those big, massive blowout days. You know, they're managing things quite well for a period of time. In other words, kind of keeping the shit together, and then all of a sudden it kind of pops. And that even occurs with overconfidence, right? You're doing really well for weeks on end, and your P&L is rising, but so is your confidence, and rises, you know, a bit too much. And now all of a sudden, you know, when your emotions rise too high, they shut down higher brain function. You lose the ability to think as clearly, access new knowledge. You just start to default back to, you know, what you want in the here and now, in the immediate moment, which is obviously to win, to make money, to make progress, to make the right decisions. You know, and all that is challenging in an environment with so much variance, so much false feedback. So emotional control is, to me, a tactic to help you to manage the short term. The real goal is to understand your emotions and correct the cause of them, right? We often think of the emotion as the problem, but the emotion is really just signaling deeper flaws, biases, wishes, illusions, hopes. Those are the real problems because they're altering your perspective. They're bringing bias into the market. You're not kind of clearly interpreting what's happening. You're now coloring the experience of what's going on, right? And you've all experienced those times, right? Where you you make something out of nothing, right? You turn just chop into a magical opportunity. And sure, now you're maybe raging at that moment because you've taken 3 losses in a row, maybe, a couple that have stopped you out by a tick. And all of a sudden now you start to create something out of nothing. And so our perceptions can easily be altered. That's the real problem. Our emotions are simply helping us to orient, to figure out what those problems might be. And just to make this really, really clear, for those of you who might be a little bit skeptical, if you have pain in your foot, pain in your ankle, pain anywhere in your body, right? Unless it's chronic and you already know the cause of it, right? If it's new, like, you're not going to just deal with it. At a certain point, you're going to want to understand what's causing it. And it could be quite simple. You have a rock in your shoe, right? Sprained your ankle, worked out too hard, you have a torn ligament, like whatever the issue is, you're going to want to explore it and understand it. But the pain is never viewed as the problem.
Sure.
Right? The pain just kind of orients us to a place to help us begin understanding what the heck's going on.
And if I remember correctly, your depth, I guess, in how you treat performance coaching, you don't try to go all the way back to like lay on the couch, tell me about your childhood, right? You're looking for something more current. So like where's that line for you when you're trying to get to the core of what your problem is? That's not, dad and mom.
So the line is, we can deal with those biases, performance flaws, those wishes, those hopes, those excessive aspirations in a very pragmatic way. I don't need to know where they came from unless there is some old emotion that's unresolved. Another word for trauma. And trauma, might sound really, really severe, but sometimes, as kids growing up, like, things happen, you live a very good life, normal life, but there's like kind of something that's, maybe it's getting embarrassed on the playground. I had a golfing client who, she remembered being embarrassed on the playground, at like 10 years old, and it was affecting her at 65 after having been a very successful competitive athlete for decades. But there was just something about golf that like exposed that old weakness. That's generally pretty rare, right? For the most part, you have people who hate to lose. You have very competitive people who are perfectionists with high expectations. They have an altered sense of control. They want to be right. They believe, in this sort of hindsight bias way, that because they know afterwards that they should have been able to know beforehand. And so there's a lot of self-criticism that kind of comes up from that. You have these times where, you just are doing so well, you just assume that this is going to continue. You've kind of figured it out. Like, the market's now easy. You're just going to keep making money every day. I mean, there's like kind of very practical performance-based flaws that, it doesn't really matter where they came from. The fact that you have them today is enough, and that's what we're gonna deal with.
So do you bubble all those kind of core different reasons, the different reasons of I don't want to lose? If it's that particular emotion that's part of the trader's trait, do you have a certain path that person would go on, or is it all kind of bubbled into, you need to get back to logic? Like, you're in an emotional space, I need to get back to logic. And maybe you could talk about, because I think that's one of your topics that's somewhat simple, goes into detail in the book, which is great book, everyone pick it up. Injecting logic is just it's embedded in me now after reading your book. And if you could explain that to people, just sort of as a starting point for some of your processes.
Yeah, the natural thing that we do when we're experiencing a problem is trying to kind of talk our way through it, right? Like, we think to ourselves like, oh, like, stop acting like an idiot, or like, oh, that was dumb. There's something that's we're reacting to in our minds. Generally, it's not very productive, as the two examples I just gave would be categorized. Injecting logic basically turns phrases or statements that you might naturally say in a good way, but turns it into a technique. When you think about repetition and training in a physical standpoint, like, it's kind of obvious and easy. It's like, I'm a golfer, I'm like trying to work on something in my swing, or, an athlete, like, it's physically visible. You can see it. But what does technique look like for the mind? And so we craft these phrases and statements, and you train them so that they are ready in the moment when those emotions strike. Because if you're not ready, your emotions are going to steamroll that mental process. You can't kind of spontaneously think on the fly well enough to reliably be able to correct those emotions. You can do it, but in my mind, you're gambling, right? You're just hoping to get lucky in that moment, that you're going to think the exact right thing that's going to stop your intense revenge enough to be able to keep you out of the market.
It's that primal, the bear's chasing you, and you're going, like, to think that the bear's going to be chasing you, you're gonna inject logic is not going to happen.
Is absurd
unless you plan for it.
Unless you plan for it, right? And so you've probably heard the phrase, like, we don't rise to the level of our aspirations, we fall to the level of our training. And so if you're not training this logic, these corrections, these statements, these affirmations, these whatever, I really don't care the word, right? I like the term injecting logic because it kind of has the implications of almost like inoculating yourself with a cure. It's like getting the vaccine that's going to, cure whatever you're dealing with, right? It's not, I realize it's not the exact same, but you're kind of injecting this correction into that emotional moment. And if it is done well, if it has been properly trained, it will have an immediate impact. Now, will that immediate impact be like, oh my God, I feel, perfectly back to normal in seconds? No. It should stop your emotions in its tracks. It should actually start to dissipate them, so your thinking starts to kind of come back online, within a few moments. The key, though, is that you have a very clear understanding of what's causing that emotion, right? Because if you're, being greedy, and your logic is don't be greedy, not really a correction, right? If you're being greedy and you're recognizing, like, I'm being greedy because I am expecting myself to be right. And because I'm expecting to be right, I am taking on too much leverage. I'm moving my profit targets. I'm doing whatever. And so the correction here is, you're not a psychic. You don't know what's going to happen. If you did, you wouldn't be still trading like this, right? So you're not a psychic, like, chill the F out. So a statement like that, injected in that moment, sometimes for clients, I'll have them write it out, right? They can read it. Or you create some kind of a voice recording or even a video, right? There's all this AI, like, create a video that will help you to have that logic ready to go in that moment. But crafting that statement takes a little bit of time. You got to kind of try it out, in those moments, ideally in the earlier moments, to see if it's actually something that resonates with you. Because, look, I could say a statement like I just did, but maybe for you, that's not exactly your language. That's not exactly how you think about it. So you have to really want it to be personalized, to be potent, to have that injection truly transform or change your emotions in that moment. It takes a little bit of time.
I love that. And going back sort of to your vaccine analogy, I like that, because to your point, if you wait too long and you're in the moment and you're hyper emotional, it's tough to inject the logic as well as noticing those symptoms prior to. So, again, so for me, I might get a little sweaty in my hands, or I'll lean into the computer screen. I think a lot of people do that. But that's the time to say, hey, that's my signal, similar to my market, my strategy. I'm looking for RSI over X or Y, that's your signal for your trade. You need to have a signal that you're monitoring for yourself. And that's the best time to inject the logic, right? So
correct.
What's a good way to find those signals that you have in your body? Some people, again, they struggle. This is their first. Trading is a really interesting thing. I even had a friend, a trading person, who he wasn't even interested in trading, but he heard you get to learn so much about yourself when you learn to trade. That's why he started trading. He ended up being really good, which is really cool, probably because he had that mindset. But a lot of people aren't coming from that approach, and they want to push it away and they want to just hit buttons. So I often, again, try to fill that gap. How can you help fill that gap so they can start having more introspection? What are those simple steps they could start taking to get into the right frame of mind?
Yeah, if we can actually add the screen share to the
Sure.
stream here. This is called a data collection worksheet. It's freely available on my website, jaredtendler.com /worksheets. But you can see it's not a very complicated idea. All we are effectively doing is gathering up these, what I would call kind of puzzle pieces of those moments, right? What are the signals that are occurring? And we're going to kind of analyze the trigger, right? What's going to sort of spark the fear, the FOMO, the revenge, the anger, whatever. What thoughts are kind of in your mind at that time? What emotions are present? Obviously, you can kind of describe exactly what you're feeling. What are the behaviors, right? You talk about kind of leaning in, maybe squeezing the mouse, actions, right? Kind of be a little bit kind of an overlap in the same idea. But there's oftentimes like kind of internal physical symptoms, elevated heart rate, maybe, knee tapping, things like that. And then these next two sections oftentimes get confused. Okay. When I say change in, I don't mean like aspirationally change your perception, but no, like what is the actual kind of delta in your mind at that moment? What's actually changing for the negative? So maybe you start to become more directionally biased. Maybe you start to assume that your position is going to get stopped out. Maybe your sense of opportunism now is just rising to a much greater degree. So you're just really trying to analyze all of these different data points to gather up a more clear picture. And with clients, I have them filling these out throughout the trading session, right? Ideally print it out, because sometimes I think there's a tactile point of reflection that you get when you're handwriting that is just different than just typing. It also kind of get real-time feedback for yourself. Like if you're off and you're actively kind of writing down some of these data points, like it will help to kind of disrupt the momentum of this escalation in emotion. So even just, from an emotional control standpoint, this actually can help you to be in better control, again, as a tactic in the near term to help you to improve. It's not a very complicated exercise. Ideally, it's kind of done exactly as you mentioned, Josh, that as soon as you start to recognize there's a deviation, right? So if you're kind of driving down the right road with the right mentality, making the right trades, you're in a good headspace. Like you don't have to do this, right? If you want to better understand what your optimal trading looks like, then sure, but you don't have to do that. What you do want to, though, as soon as you start to kind of deviate, as soon as you clearly have now taken the wrong path, and there are some indications of some small frustration, a little bit of itchiness that kind of wants you to get into another trade. It's been kind of a sideways, barcodey, choppy market, not really much of an opportunity. You only have a limited amount of time to trade because you trade part-time. And now you start to feel the itchiness bubbling up. You haven't made any mistakes, but clearly you're now like scanning in a way that you wouldn't when you were in that kind of optimal state. That's when you start to use the data collection worksheet. So you can start to identify those very early warning signs. And once you kind of see that early deviation that leads to a much bigger deviation in the future is caused by the same fundamental problem, right? I am a trader. I need to trade would be an example of a very basic bias. Like, no, as a trader, your job is to make high probability bets. So if you're a trader with the belief that you have to take trades, well, now all of a sudden, that's going to create a little bit of itchiness, early on, but out of the gate, then when you're down money, not only are you a trader who has to trade, you're a trader who has to trade profitably and make money every day. Now all of a sudden the flaw kind of gets more expanded, but it's the same kind of fundamental kind of track. And those injecting logic statements get to kind of help you at each stage where the emotion escalates. But you can't kind of figure out what those statements are going to be until you've really kind of mapped and understood the issues that you're experiencing.
So when traders go on like a losing streak, if they haven't kind of done these kinds of processes to mitigate their emotional deficit, I guess you could say, as they continue to trade day after day, they're feeling it. They're under more financial stress because of it. What would you say? Should traders stop trading in that? I mean, obviously you don't want to lose money. Like if you're gonna trade and you're in a place where you cannot handle doing the execution you should do, don't trade. To your point, but do you find that completely stopping trading or stopping the process is a bad thing because you're not facing it head on and learning to nothing like that?
Well, again, to kind of time and place, right? You don't just kind of have a rock in your shoe. You actually have like a severe strain in your knee. Like you should stop running. You know, but it's the kind of what you do in that time off. You know,
right.
It's for traders. Like the analogy kind of stops because, or I guess maybe it doesn't, because you know, for us, like kind of normal people who aren't professional athletes, like, you know, it's basically just going to be like rest and icing it. But if you're a professional athlete, like you have doctors.
Aren't you on the PGA Tour?
I was not. I wanted to be. Yeah,
okay.
you're a professional athlete, but you've got people who are surrounding you, capable of speeding the acceleration of that injury, and they're also helping you to figure out like why it happened in the first place and to strengthen muscles or add flexibility or coordination to help you along the way. So the point is that from a trading standpoint, there might be times where you have to stop, but many traders just kind of use that period to just kind of blow off steam and just kind of like try to mentally reset. But the reality is that you're only just going to kind of like land back in this spot again at some point, or at least the odds are pretty high that that'll be the case. So I kind of think of this as like a leaky faucet, right? Like, you know, you got a leaky faucet, you stick a glass underneath it, right? It's just going to fill up. Eventually, you got to dump it out. Now, ultimately, you want to fix the leak. And so if you're just like decompressing during that time away from trading, you're actually losing a lot of the details, right? Like you would get from that data collection worksheet that would help you to better understand what the heck you're dealing with, you know? And so I would strongly advise that you don't have to do the data collection. At that point, you've got so much in your head, open up a blank sheet of paper and just answer the question like, what is going on? What is going wrong? Why do you feel this way? What mistakes you've been making? What things you've been doing well? Right? Be practical, but just, in other words, really do kind of a hard analysis, but not necessarily a database one. I mean, yes, you obviously can be using your stats and things like, but there's a lot of content that's in your head. Dump it all out, get it out so you can look at it. Here's another kind of limitation of the mind. We all know that phone numbers are 7 digits minus an area code. And that came because of the AT&T research back in the 30s. And what they found was that the average person could remember 7 digits. In other words, working memory has a limited capacity. Our ability to remember and actively recall information in our minds has a cap. Now, it ranges, but the point is it's not limitless. So when you have all this information kind of consumed in your mind, which actually makes it more overwhelming at a time when you're struggling, you are limited in your ability to kind of wade through and process it. Another way to think about this is like, imagine trying to complete a puzzle, but every time you stick your hand in the box, you can only look at like 4 pieces. And then you got to put them back, and then you can look at another 4. What I'm suggesting basically is you're taking your hand in that box, taking some pieces out, putting them on the table, and you keep doing that until you get to see all the pieces. Now, you still don't know what the picture is. You still don't know how it all makes sense or fits together, but you at least have the ability to escape the limitations of the mind to be able to work with the material that is affecting you directly, that is helping to describe what you're dealing with directly, just telling you why you have dug this hole deeper, or at least give you a starting point to figure out that why. So the writing is essential. And then as you kind of start to make sense of it, or at least try to, that's where you kind of go and engage with my system to better understand some causality, so you can build a system that's not going to just get you out of this hole. Because I don't think that should be the goal. A lot of people say, oh, I just want to get my confidence back. I want to get back to my high water mark. You think directionally, like you only go one way, right? There's only forward. So if you're going to go forward, do you want to just get out, or do you want to get out, de-risking the chances of getting back in? In other words, create a higher area of consolidation, create a higher low, right? It's the same idea. Yeah. And if you do that reliably, you get to kind of make the most of that drawdown.
Uh, yeah, that's great. The high performing traders. So there's sort of traders that are new. They're struggling with emotions and technical abilities, getting further and further into high performance traders. What do you see as far as psychology goes when traders get into that realm that they're still struggling with? Like, what hangs on? What's the hardest parts to kind of to leave behind?
So here's the irony. It's all the same. All the issues are the same, whether you're a beginning trader or whether you're, one of the best traders in the world. Now, the scale is obviously a lot smaller, right? There's far kind of fewer, or level of severity is much less. But the issues are roughly the same. There are traders at the top of the game who will struggle with FOMO when guys in the desk are making more than them, or in a position that's working and they're not. They'll struggle with anger and revenge. They'll have fear and some fear of losing, especially if they're made a bunch of money and now kind of clamming up, waiting to get their payout, or for themselves just kind of wanting to lock up a great month or a great year. We often still kind of anchor ourselves to those nice round numbers rather than kind of just seeing it as one long game. Now, yes, the level of severity is much less. Their level of technical proficiency is, X-fold greater. And I think that's the biggest difference, right? So to me, I do think it is funny, when traders say, or people think that trading is predominantly psychological. You've got this strategy, you might be learning from somebody else and you're like, oh, I understand the nuances. Well, I have seen elite traders trying to explain what they do to others. Now, if it's another trader who is very kind of like-minded and understands a lot of the nuances, they can kind of get what they're saying with, kind of very few elaborations. But when there's a bigger gap in skill, the other trader who does not have that skill is completely lost. My point in saying that is there's often a lot more nuance and complexity when you are learning trading strategies. And if you're learning from somebody else, you can get a lot very quickly and easily, but the secret sauce is in the 10-20% that's not easily communicated. And sometimes those elite traders are not able to communicate it very well. Right. So the point again is trading is predominantly technical, strategic. That will never change. The mental processes that you're exercising in your decision making, yes, that is obviously important, but think of the mental game as a bit more like the oil in an engine, right? If you have an engine that is a high performance F1 race car, I mean, you have to be really, really precise, in the amount of oil that you have, right? Your mental game has to be really, really finely tuned. Otherwise, right, you can make some big, bad decisions that are going to be incredibly costly because of the scale and the size you're dealing with. So the point is, right, we want to have, that kind of free flowing friction from what you understand technically and strategically, what you're perceiving about the market, to be very easily processed. And the mental and emotional stuff is what impairs that first and foremost. Yes, and it actually can enhance it, but I'd say that's a piece that many traders are not kind of in the position to capitalize on quite yet. They got to first, play better defense before they can have a better offense.
Right. So traders in this space, it's kind of a weird time where these funding firms are all coming up. There's a lot of them. Traders are blowing accounts at a pace they could never do with their own capital because they just run out of capital too fast. So these traders are all experiencing blowing accounts aggressively. What would you say, kind of sticking with the theme of the stream today, what would you suggest for traders kind of as a whole to step into, to stop blowing accounts, like slow down, take their time and look into this?
Yeah, I mean, the slowing down part, right? I mean, many traders think that this is something that you can just kind of pick up like that, right? I mean, nobody is hiring a lawyer who is fresh out of law school when you've got like a very big case on your hands, right? Whether it be an accident, whether it be some kind of a lawsuit. I mean, you want somebody with experience, same with a doctor, same with anybody in fields that are relatively important. So would you hire yourself if you only had 2 years of experience trading? Would you give somebody else your money with that level of experience? I think trading takes far longer than most people think, and most are prepared to at the outset. So out of the gate, there's an urgency and intensity to the pacing with which you're trying to become successful that then amplifies all the mental and emotional stuff, all the extra pressure you now feel, because you're now under this sort of time pressure to make it happen. And it's not to say that it can't. I've seen plenty of traders be successful, incredibly successful, within 18 months, within 2 years. I just think it's quite rare. And I've seen plenty of other traders who have taken 8 to 10 years to be successful. They just kept at it, doing it as a part-time thing, figuring it out. A client who I worked with 6 years ago just checked in with recently, and now no longer blowing accounts, has like 50 prop firm accounts, and is just now working on stacking up more payouts. But it took a while to get there. So my first point, just to reiterate, is trading takes longer than you expect. Really work to become a seasoned, skilled trader. Don't just become somebody who's capable of making money and making money quickly, because you're not really learning a skill that you're going to be able to leverage long term. We can hand you a bunch of cash and capital right now, but what would happen to it? That's number one. Number two, okay, so let's assume that you've got a better kind of pacing with this. Make sure you are working diligently on the technical and strategic side, and make sure that you're doing the exact same thing I mentioned from a data collection worksheet, and beginning to better understand the nuances of your patterning. These blowouts are not random. They happen in predictable ways again and again. So if you're going to stop a pattern, you got to be able to see it. And that's what the data collection worksheet helps you do. You have to be able to see it in real time. Otherwise, you cannot stop it. So yeah, these things are not, insurmountable. They're incredibly common. But I think it just takes like kind of the right motivation, the right perspective, to be able to take these things on with a greater sense of pragmatism. I think it's worthwhile just to kind of go over the survey that everybody filled out. We got
let's do that.
Decent number of responses here.
Is that the one you're sharing now?
Yeah, let me just pull this up here. There we go. All right, so number one, I believe psychology plays an important role in trading. Looks like 98% of you agree. Only one person strongly disagrees. I believe that emotions can negatively affect my performance. 98% of you. Only one person disagrees. Okay. I recognize when issues with emotions affect my trading. Okay. Now, a lot of you strongly agree, and a lot of you are only. So we're starting to see a little bit of a dip, and then here's where the pattern strongly holds. I have a concrete strategy for managing my emotions. So 98% of you agree that these are
a gap there.
And only looks like 37% of you agree that you have a strategy. So 62% of you, right, either don't or are unsure or strongly disagree that you have this concrete strategy. So that gap has to be filled. And that's a large part what my work is really designed to do, right, is to give you that concrete strategy. Let me just pull up one other thing here, which is this quick guide to my system. Okay, so we've talked about this mapping your pattern, the data collection, right? This worksheet here. This is like the primary kind of first piece that you're talking about. Eventually, you're going to turn it into a very tangible map, right? That grades the escalation of your emotions, right? And all this is described in mental game trading, but you don't have to necessarily read the book cover to cover to begin doing this, right? You can download the worksheets from our website. And begin kind of getting some help that way. Then, okay, so step one is map the pattern, get really intimate detail of what you're dealing with. Number two goes back to understanding the core flaws, biases, wishes, illusions that you're struggling with. And there's a tool I use called a mental hand history, right? It's basically just a problem-solving worksheet that, kind of guides you through to figure out like what exactly is at the root of your issue. Okay. Once you figure that out, now you kind of combine the map with the injecting logic and another component to create your real-time strategy. This is what you're going to use day in and day out to battle up against those emotional impulses, and they're going to hang around for a while. Right? The best way I could describe what this process looks like is it's like chopping down a tree with an axe. And out of the gate, the axe might be blunt, you might be weak, and the tree might be quite large. Okay, but over time, you're going to get stronger. You're going to sharpen the strategy that you're using, and it's going to have more and more of an effect. And you'll be able to chop this stuff down, which is where the rinse and repeat, component comes in. That's what it is. It's just a constant application until you reach the point where you have firmly corrected, right, or upgraded your perspective, corrected the bias, right, changed the way in which you're seeing yourself, the markets, your positions, etc., automatically. So now all of those triggers can be out there, right? Whether it be, taking a few losses, seeing other people make money, getting 90% of the way towards passing a combine or getting funded, all those things that might have triggered you. Now there's nothing inside to alter your perspective and create a lot of that emotion. You're just able to kind of handle those situations with great ease. Yes, it takes work to get there, right? But it's not insurmountable, and that's what the system is designed for. So you're building a system for your trading strategy. Well, you need a system for your mentality, and that's what my work provides.
Yeah, I love that. Just to give people an idea, again, he's giving you a lot of worksheets, a lot of help you can do without even getting the book. But I would 100%, I recommend it to everybody who's struggling, even a little bit in their trading. It's practical. It's not going to be a bunch of fluff. It's going to be, here, do this. These actions are going to let you come up with an idea of what you're doing wrong and how to counteract it when you're having those emotions in trading. It's not going to solve your technical issues. Your strategy can't suck. It has to have a profit factor. But this we all know we struggle. His survey proved that. Build this system.
Exactly. Yeah, and for those that either have read the book or haven't, I also do have a community where I basically kind of bring this stuff to life, and I'm actively involved in, where I am helping you to complete these worksheets and develop that mental game strategy for yourself. It's called the Mental Game of Trading Live, and it's information's here, jaredtendler.com /TMGT live. You can see lots of good reviews that have come through over the years. We've got these weekly strategy sessions, or should I say weekly? They have it 3 times a month. Strategy sessions where for 1 hour, I'm basically talking about a topic and then answering your questions, reviewing worksheets. But as I said, I'm also involved in answering, direct messages and responding to coaching questions. There's this knowledge base. So I'll show you the inside of the platform here in a second. This kind of expanded knowledge base where we're kind of chopping out individual instances where I've reviewed worksheets or talked about particular topics to make it easily and more searchable. And you're basically kind of getting a community of like-minded traders who are very, very similar, who want accountability, who want, a chance to kind of work with others who are dealing with the same kind of stuff. And this is the platform. Okay. You can see this is kind of a homepage. It kind of looks a bit like an internal Facebook page. But down this kind of left-hand column is where you'll see all the primary content, important concepts and terms to kind of help you get started. These are all the recorded strategy sessions. There's a lot of them now. We're going on 2 years now that I've been doing this. So there's a lot of content already here. So, if you already know that you're dealing with, let's say a confidence issue, you can very kind of quickly search and grab some strategy sessions all around confidence, or, if discipline has been an issue, right? Just toggle down to discipline and they're all here. And this is kind of where the knowledge base lives. All of this content is here. And yes, it might feel a little bit overwhelming at first, but I would suspect that should be a good thing, right? If you're in a situation where you got something to learn and you're not overwhelmed, then I'd say you're not trying hard enough, especially in this industry. So it's okay to kind of jump in and feel a little bit overwhelmed. Literally every direct message I get on this platform, I've got 3 already that I got to get to after we get off this call. Every direct message that I get, I respond to. And the first one you get when you join is, hey, what are you looking to work on? And I will give you some very clear direction to help accelerate this process. I'll give you specific videos that you should watch out of the gate, or specific things you should read. I think the most challenging part, for you all is to, at the same time you're the performer, you've got to be the coach and the analyzer, right? You go jack up your knee, well, you go to the doctor, you go to a surgeon, you find people who are really able to help you diagnose the problem. Once you get a really good diagnosis, it doesn't mean that it's kind of easy from that point, because it could be challenging to do rehab and figure things out or to do the work, but at least you're not lost. And I think any of you that feel lost, that is a far worse position to be in than being overwhelmed with so much content that you're not sure where to begin. But at least if you know what you're dealing with, now all of a sudden you have a way of filtering out the information you need. And certainly I, as well as other members in the community, help to make that happen and make that easy.
Yeah, I can attest. There's a lot of forums and things that might seem like what Jared's doing, and you feel like you'll get there and it'll just be a dead community. That's not what this is at all. He's very active in it. He's always doing those video calls. He answers those questions quickly. You'll be surprised where someone with the amount of people that are reaching out to him, how quickly he responds to his community. So we really appreciate you doing that.
For sure. And a lot of it is because the answers are quite simple for me. Like if I compare, so I've been coaching for 20 years now. If I were to simplify like how my expertise has evolved over time, it's just the speed to diagnosis. Like how quickly can I analyze what somebody's dealing with and either get it right or get them closer to then have them go out and gain a little bit more information to then help us figure out exactly what's right. Because sometimes traders will come and they're like, I have ideas, and I'm like, I've got a few questions here that we still need to kind of tease out. Other times, like, this is obviously what's happening, and it makes it very easy. But my ability to do that has grown X-fold over the years, and especially I've been working with traders for over a decade now. I'm not saying that every problem is easy. Sometimes there are complexities, but the reality is, and this should be somewhat comforting, the reality is that you're not that unique. We're still humans. We're 99%, having the same DNA as a chimpanzee. So like, how unique are we, right? We're not talking about, massive dramatic differences. So, kind of teasing all that out has gotten quite easy for me now.
Cool. And then I saw you have a 2-week trial on there, but you were going to extend for our traders as a sort of partnership here. Remind me, I didn't want to get it wrong. But what was the benefit that you were going to give to our traders? Yeah,
exactly. It is that 2-week trial. Yeah, the 2 weeks that you saw on the website is just a temporary one as a 2-year promotion, but that's going to go away. Yeah, you guys are permanently get the 2-week free trial.
Come trade with us. We'll have a link inside our private dashboard for anybody who's got an active account, and you can use that link and get a 2-week free trial whenever. So if you're not yet a trader with us, when you are, take advantage of it. 2 weeks with Jared, 2 video calls, questions and answers. Like, you can get a lot out of that between that and the book, and then continuing it. Raj here, actually, he went through the whole thing. He spent a lot of time with Jared in those classes, and he is a big champion of Jared, and it helped him quite a lot. And he uses those same skills to talk to our traders too. So let's get to some questions since you do them quickly.
Yeah. All right, Jared, you said you didn't believe in self-sabotage since you don't think traders have that much control of themselves. Can you play devil's advocate and make the case that it is actually something? I guess you want me to play devil's advocate? Self-sabotage is what appears to occur, right? It appears to you that because you know that you're acting against your own self-interest, the only way it would make sense is that you're doing it to yourself. And so that's why that self-sabotage appears in your mind to be what's occurring. And it's a term that gets thrown around a lot. So people just naturally kind of call out, oh, I'm self-sabotaging myself.
Sort of like OCD.
Yeah, but
people say that.
ADHD, I mean, like you especially now with AI popping up, man, like you're going to get labeled even more so than ever before. And look, a label is only as good as its ability to help you to solve the problem, right? That. Or if it's in the case of ADHD, to actually get medication that's going to help you. But most people, if you don't actually have that issue, it's going to make your life worse. And I believe that people who think that they are self-sabotaging themselves can't break out of it because the most basic flaw is not being corrected, right? Which is the belief that you're in control of what's happening. So if you believe that you're in control of what's happening, you cannot solve this problem. So you're going to end up self-sabotaging again and again and again, simply because you haven't changed your perspective. You haven't actually, like the diagnosis, right? The term is not helpful. So to me, delete the term self-sabotage. Then we get to actually look at what's happening. Okay. I believe I'm in more control of my mentality than I actually am. So then I'm not prepared enough for those moments to be able to use the system to correct my emotional reactions. Well, no shit, Sherlock.
Yeah. Next one, Raj. There you go.
I like to use platforms and systems to aid myself, but in certain cases, I cannot block certain contracts to prevent revenge trading. What do you suggest to fix this? So here you're using technology to help manage or control your emotions, which is really only a tactic in the short term. Again, like if you jack up your knee and you need crutches, like, okay, well that makes sense. But is that how you're going to live the rest of your life? Like no, like heal the injury. So in this case, you haven't given any details as to what's causing the revenge trading. Now, I can tell you from my experience that revenge trading has two components to it. One is a weakness in confidence. And that often is surprising because here you're dealing with anger. But the anger at that scale, right? Revenge is very, very intense. Anger at that scale is in part defending against the weakness that you have in your trading strategy, in how you see your trading strategy, in how you feel about yourself as a trader, in what you're expecting of yourself. There's some weakness that you're defending against, and you're using anger, not consciously, just a reflex. You're using anger to defend against that weakness. Now, that's one part of it. The other part is that you either hate losing, you hate mistakes, view losing as a mistake, which is obviously a flaw. You have some kind of injustice tilt. In other words, you think that you should have more control over your results. Trading, the results are unfair, yet whatever, you've come up with. So it's a combination of some version of anger combined with a weakness in confidence is what creates revenge trading. And so until you are able to figure out what those underlying flaws, biases, wishes, illusions are driving that cocktail, then you're not going to be able to solve for it, right? You're going to need these software aids to protect you. And that's limiting you in the short term. Sorry, limiting you in the long term.
Right. Here's another one for you.
All right. I don't have an issue with strat hopping. Great. But I have issues to sticking to my morning routine, and I'm a perfectionist. So if I don't complete it, I don't feel like trading. How to manage that perfectionistic stress. Perfectionism is a nasty problem. And it's not one that I can kind of give you a simple answer for, because it often erodes confidence from within. Imagine getting osteoporosis of the mind, or of your confidence. That's what this is. Like your bones have become brittle because your perfectionistic standard has prevented you from gaining feedback, pride, satisfaction from your accomplishments, from your learning, from your growth over the years, right? You only gain confidence if you exceed your perfectionistic standards, which is going to happen rarely. Most of the time you're falling below it. So you have now reached a point where your perfectionism is so high that you don't feel any good if you're below it, which is, I think, incredibly weak. There's no hardiness here. I mean, trading at high levels is incredibly chaotic, but the ones who are really successful are able to kind of thrive in the chaos. They don't curate their world in a way that kind of what's the word? Just think of like a sterilize. They don't sterilize their world, right? They've inoculated themselves to it. They can have germs kind of thrown on them every day. They just don't get sick anymore. They're basically like a kindergarten teacher, right? So right now you have curated and sterilized your trading so much so that any small imperfection is a massive threat. And it is that way, not because of what you're doing in the near term. It's what's happened over time you are way stronger than you think you are. And that's the perceptual error. So I've got a lot of content on this, both in the trading book, but also on my website. So go to jaredtendler.com/perfectionism. There's a very detailed blog that'll get you started on working through this. But it is not a simple answer, right? Like you can't cure osteoporosis instantaneously, and you're not going to solve this instantaneously either, but it at least going to get you on the road to doing that, and begin inoculating yourself to more germs.
One thing that's interesting, I think there's a false sense of accomplishment right now, because there's a lot of prop firms that make it just super easy to pass a test. They're trying to it's almost shrinking more and more and more, where it's just, you can just pass it in one trade almost, and it gives them that, oh, I passed, here's a certificate from one day, and then they fall flat because flip of the coin, you can pass an assessment at this point in a lot of places. And I think you mentioned it earlier, but what I always try to tell people is tilting is anything not left or right of center, right? So tilting mostly is commonly thought of as struggling or getting really mad or angry and those kinds of things. But tilting is, I think when you pass an assessment, many traders, and we see it when traders go live, we try to slow them down even further. We're like, what's the smallest size you're willing to trade with? And yeah, that when they pass or they feel that forward momentum, they're tilted almost just the same as when they're struggling.
Yeah, I would call that overconfident. Right, you're getting kind of false positive feedback, which then elevates your sense of accomplishment, elevates your sense of competence. And anytime that your actual competence is misaligned with your confidence, right, how you feel about your skills, you're gonna be dangerous. So I like the fact that you guys are more pragmatic here. And look, if other prop firms are acquiescing to people's needs to be successful quickly, and then they're basically creating more gamblers.
Yeah.
And the goal, as you guys have, is to create traders, people who are skilled, capable of wielding an edge reliably in the markets. Those are two incredibly different things. Now, they both might create the same outcome, because somebody could make $5 million and getting lucky, and somebody can make $5 million the right way, over a certain period of time. But the odds are dramatically stacked in the favor of the seasoned, skilled trader. Right? Only if a handful of people are able to win the lottery.
If they continue to trade.
Yeah, and especially exactly. I mean, and we all know that lottery winners go broke. I mean, 80% of them go broke. So even if you were able to get lucky and pass that BS challenge and then get funded and then make money really, really quickly, the odds are against you that you're going to even keep it. Not even in the markets. Forget the market, right? We know you're going to blow it in the markets. I'm even saying on a personal level, you take a $1 million payout, that money is very likely to be gone within 3 to 5 years. So
right,
yeah, we don't like luck here. All right, I guess maybe last question here. If I have a strategy and I decide to make a fixed amount per day, but lose 800, can I violate my profit objective without much risk to make up for the loss? You're asking a question that is incredibly nuanced, that is ignoring the fact that you broke your stop loss. So can you break a rule to compensate for breaking another rule? No, you can't. I mean, you can obviously in practicality, because you do whatever the heck you want. But like, if you're going to become more disciplined, you can't become more disciplined by breaking more rules. Hard stop.
Sure. Yep. That's a good one. Okay. I think that will be the last question. So yeah, Jared, I appreciate it. It's great having you on. I love talking with you. Wish I could have you on every week. Cool. But if you want to see Jared every week, join his program, read his book. Again, I don't get anything for saying that. I really believe, and we tell our traders, Jared's book is in the top. He's the one psychology book we recommend, and he's in the top 3 books we'd recommend to traders, new or old. So get your performance coaching from a guy that shadows on the PGA Tour, right? And helps some of those guys out on the PGA Tour. So he's not just talking it. He's actively helping some high end people. I even saw you on. I saw a game documentary several years ago for League of Legends or
Esports, yeah, the was that
one of those. Yeah, and you were on it at the house teaching the team. I love that.
Yeah.
I was surprised,
yeah.
pleasantly surprised.
I mean, it was a very kind of easy transition. You know, same issues, just different environment, right? And like trading, right? I've been kind of ancillarily involved, you know, in the markets since I was 13. You know, doing stock challenges, you know, back with a newspaper back then. And you know, obviously played video games. So, you know, to get paid to watch people play video games and help them, not a bad gig. So
right. I have one last question for you.
Yeah.
So all this said, you do try to make yourself more and more professional at different. I mean, you play poker, right, as well, and
yeah, I've got a home game here in my.
And you're
my
serious about golfing yourself. You are trying to level up your golfing skills. So
Yeah.
how much of the program are you doing yourself?
Oh, I mean, I obviously as
All this worksheets, are you doing it all?
Yeah, I mean, yes. I mean, part of it is like I get to be I was always my first client. I'm kind of like the you know, kind of the laboratory, you know, try stuff out on myself and
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to help other people, but it's also fun to help yourself too. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got 3 more years until I can try out for the U.S. Senior Open. So
that'll be so cool.
Goals,
We'll be rooting for you. Awesome.
Thanks.
All right. Thanks, guys. If you have any more questions, you know, you can hit Jared up through his program or reach out to us on our support chat or the Discord. We still have a 60% off our assessments going. We have practice accounts. If you're not ready, you can kind of put a little bit of money on the line and get a feel for some of your strategies and what that feels like. Whatever you do, we just hope you don't go around resetting 1 million times a day and sign up for 1 million assessments, because most people in this space are struggling. So work on that. Don't work on how many assessments can I collect. Think forward. All right, guys. Thanks.
Take care.